Hello, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed last week's lesson with Ruby Free Geezer as much as I did. I thought it was great that she could pull together all the things that we have been learning when she showed us the slides on her tell. I hope that today you will also enjoy learning about seals. Now, I'm not talking about the animal, nor am I talking about the stamps that are associated with Easter or Christmas, but about pieces of metal or hard substance which have been engraved with an imprint and can make a mark or an impression upon clay or paper or another object. When my husband and I lived in China some years ago, we both received a chop. This is really a seal, but in China they call them chops. These are made of ivory, and they have our name on them, and they are red because we have used them for demonstrations sometimes. And I would like to show you how these work. We take the red clay-like substance, which is kept in a little pot, and we press the top into it. Then we take it and we put it on paper. We press it well, and when we are finished, it looks like this. Perhaps you have noticed that this kind of an insignia or chop is found on many things that come from Japan or China or even Korea. For instance, this watercolor, which was done in China by a man who wrote his name in Chinese characters and then put his chop at the bottom. Or I have these characters, which were written by a Japanese man, and when he was finished, he wrote his name and he put his chop, or in Japan they call them henkos. You know, the Japanese henkos are very important today. They have become more important than they have been in history. In fact, I am told that some Japanese people find they need three of them. They need a registered one, an ordinary one, and one for bank transactions. Sometimes it's very difficult to get money out of the bank if you cannot sign your name and use your hanko to show that that is authentic, that it identifies you. I bought I was given, really, a Korean calendar. It was beautiful. And I noticed that each one of the pictures had on it the name of the artist and, again, the chop, which goes along with it. In Oriental countries, the chop is very important. It's a seal. And so it is, too, not so much with individuals in our country as it is with organizations and so forth. Our government, our United States government, has a seal. Individual states have seals. Business and corporations, maybe even your church, has a seal which identifies it and authenticates what it does. I want to show you the one that the GCSSA, or the Greater Chicago Sunday School Association, uses. This is the agency who sponsors our program. They take this apparatus, which is a press seal, and they put it, a little piece of gold foil or gold paper. They press it hard and then remove. You have to specially do this one by hand. I think the GCSSA needs a little more money. And then you pull it out and you get the seal. Now, these seals would be able to authenticate what is done. For instance, they're put on certificates. If any of you will order a workbook, and I hope that you do, by the way, we put a lot of time and effort into preparing a nice workbook for you that will go along with this course. And if you do complete the work of each lesson, then you will get a certificate, and in the certificate will also be the certification or the seal, the authentic seal by GCSSA. Now, I don't imagine that you have a seal yourself. Neither do I. But in old Mesopotamia, if you bought a piece of land or you sold wheat, or if you made a contract for marriage, you had to use a seal. Most of the time, the material the people used for writing was clay. But the seals themselves had different forms. The most popular, and perhaps the oldest, was the cylinder seal. I have here a replica of a cylinder seal, which comes from Old Babylonia. You will see how this has been carved out. All the figures have been carved. And when a person wanted to authenticate his work or to show who he was, he would take a piece of clay and he would run this seal over the soft clay. After he ran it over the soft clay, the impression would remain. Then when the clay was hardened, this would be on it to show who had put the seal on. It again identified the person. Seals have many other forms. I would like to show you that there are other slides. We have slides which can show you other things and other shapes that these seals had. Cylinder seals really look like clay spools, as the one that I showed you, which first appeared over 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and remained a very popular type of seal for almost 3,000 years. The first seals depicted pictures of flowers, animals, gods, or geometric designs. These forms persisted. Materials used for the seals ranged from baked clay to gold, silver, pink marble, rock crystal, ivory, or lapis lazuli. When writing was invented, owners' names began to appear on the seals, perhaps their occupations, and sometimes even their fathers' names. Herodotus, who was the Greek historian, wrote that every Babylonian carries a seal and a walking stick. Thousands of seals have been recovered. A friend of mine has 18 original seals. The one in the background is made of pink marble and is thick and short. He is holding a cylinder seal, and the front ones are cone-shaped. The Egyptians didn't use the cylinder seal very much. They wrote on papyrus, and stamp seals work much better on papyrus than cylinders do. Some stamp seals were in the form of cones, as we saw in the last picture, and some were in the form of rings. And some were in the shape of beetles or scarabs. The Egyptians had a fascination for beetles, dung beetles. They were used profusely on jewelry, on bracelets, as you see here, or necklaces, but especially as seals. Every pharaoh had his scarab. You see, the sun looks like a big ball going through the sky. The dung beetle lays her egg in dung and then rolls it into a ball. A friend took this picture in Egypt last winter. Look at the huge ball this little creature is making, much larger than herself. So the Egyptians figured that that little beetle or scarab represented the power that rolled the huge sun across the sky every day. On top of that, when the Nile waters receded and went back into the river after the flooding, this dung ball popped open and a baby beetle came out. Continuous existence, surely sacred, must be spontaneous generation. And this made the people feel that the scarabs were extremely important. I have here a few samples of scarabs, which I got from Egypt. These are large models of the seals. You will see it is a scarab with his head and his wings. Even sometimes they show the feet. And underneath, you will see the writing, which can be used as a seal. Here is another, which is darker, dark green, like a soapstone. This one, too, shows the legs, and it shows the seal at the bottom in Egyptian hieroglyphics, or hieroglyphs. This one doesn't show the legs as the others did, but it does have the writing at the bottom, and again, it's a beetle. Now, these are large ones. The real size of a scarab was usually about this size if it were a seal. You can see this one is made of gold. I'm going to assure you it's a replica. It's made of gold, And it has the little seal at the bottom, which is the insignia. This one can be worn as a pin because it has a hole at the top. Okay. So the scarab seals were very popular. In fact, you will find if you read anything about Egypt at all that they're used even as a god because the people thought so much of the power that raised the sun to push the sun through the sky. And the sun was also, of course, one of their gods. Now, why did they use these seals? Well, kings used them because they wanted to represent authority. I know that you remember occasions in the Bible when this was true. I would like to tell you of a couple of them. The first one is one that's taken from Egypt. You remember that Joseph was taken to Egypt and in time he came to Pharaoh to interpret a dream. Do you recall that after he interpreted the dreams of the Pharaoh, that the Pharaoh made him to be the second ruler in the land? And this is what we read in Genesis. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck, had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, but put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. But that signet was very important because it meant that everything that Joseph wrote as an order was given the authority of the Pharaoh because he could put the Pharaoh's signet seal on it. The next instance I would like to tell you about took place in Israel. Do you remember King Ahab? He was a strange king, a wicked man, and he had a wife, you remember, named Jezebel. Well, one time Ahab wanted a garden that was next to his palace. He asked the man who owned it, whose name was Naboth, if he would sell it to him. And Naboth said no. It had been in the family for generations, and he did not feel it was right for him to sell the land. And so when Jezebel came into Ahab's room after that, she found him pouting, lying on the bed, looking at the wall, being very unhappy. And then when she found out what the trouble was, she said to herself, I can take care of that. And so she wrote a letter to the authorities in the city. And she said to them, I want you to take Naboth, and I want you to say that he has blasphemed and stoned him. And then she took the king's ring. Listen to what it says. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed his seal on them, and sent them to the elders and the nobles who lived in Naboth's city with them. And she told them what to do, and the result was that Naboth was killed, and the wicked plot of Jezebel worked because she had access to the king's signet ring. The next example takes place in Persia. You recall that Haman, that wicked Haman, wanted to destroy all the Jews, and he persuaded King Ahasuerus to write an edict that all the Jews should be killed on a certain day. Little did he know that Esther, his queen, was a Jew. And when the plot of Haman was found out, Ahasuerus turned around and gave the authority of the kingdom as vice president or as his prime minister. Instead of giving it to Haman, he gave it to Mordecai, who was Esther's relative. And again, this is what we read. Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her, and the king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. So what Mordecai would write would carry the authority of the king. So seals meant authority. Another thing that seals meant was identification. In many of the graves that they have found, seals have been located, and these seals tell the people whose grave it is. Also, they have found jars, wine jars, and these jars would have a handle which might have a seal impressed on it, and this would tell them exactly who had made the wine or to whom it belonged. Dr. Pritchard was very excited one day when he came across a handle. Remember that big pool at Gibeon that they had used as a dump? Well, they found a handle in it, and the handle was of a jar, and it said the word Hananiah on it. And Dr. Pritchard remembered that somewhere in Jeremiah, he had read something about the name Hananiah. And he looked it up, and there he found it. the prophet Hananiah, son of Azur, who was from Gibeon. And he said he could hardly sleep that night because he thought it could be exactly his own handle that he had touched. On top of that, we have the seal of the king. The seal here, which is shown of a winged disc. And on this one, it says, to the king. This is a jar handle, and again, it tells who owned it. And there's one more thing I'd like to tell you about, and that is those bricks that they find. You know, sometimes when I go to museums, I will see these large bricks made of clay, which come from Egypt. Oftentimes, they're mixed with straw, just as the Bible tells. And then there will be a big cartouche or a seal on it, which is the seal of the Pharaoh. And he puts his stamp on that brick, and that tells us during whose reign that brick was made. Also, seals prevent stealing, or I should say they show security. In this sense, if you bought some milk and there was supposed to be a seal around it and the seal was broken, you would know that the bottle had been opened. Or if you bought fingernail polish and the seal was broken, you would know the same thing. Or bottled water. In the ancient days, they used bottles and put a piece of maybe linen on top or clay, and then they would stamp that. That would show that this bottle had not been opened. Or they might take a clay tablet and put a linen cloth around it and then put clay over the string that tied it and put a seal on that. And if the seal were there, it would show that it had not been broken into. Now, the sealing for security does not mean that it can't be broken into. For instance, when Carter was digging in the Valley of the Kings and found King Tut's grave, he knew that it had been broken into twice. He went through the first room and into the second, where there was a large shrine. And this shrine had two doors on one end, which opened by pulling out. And someone had opened those doors before. So he opened them and looked inside and found another shrine. But when he saw that shrine, to his joy, he saw that through the handles of the door, a rope had been entwined and that the blob of clay had been put on the end. And that when that happened, that the seal was on the end, and that seal showed that King Tut, that the grave had not been opened. I would like to go over to the classroom here and show you a picture of that seal. You see, here are the two doors, and they pulled out. These are the two handles. The rope was entwined like this between the two, but right here, you see, there was a blob of clay. And this blob of clay had the sign of the dead on it, and it had not been broken. So Carter knew that when he opened these two doors, no one had ever gone beyond it, and that when he went inside, he would find the body of King Tut, which is exactly what he found. Now, that same thing happened in the story of Daniel. You remember when Daniel was put into the lion's den, that the king Darius came, and he and his men put their seals on that stone. They didn't put it there so that no one else would be able to open the door. They did it there to put authority of the king behind the seal, that no one would open it. I know another example that you will think of right away, and that is Jesus' tomb. You recall the Jews came to Pilate, and they said to him, "Look, this man, Jesus, when he was alive, said he would rise again from the dead. We want you to really watch so that his grave will be protected." And one of the things that they did was that they sealed the grave of Jesus. What did that mean? That over the stone that was rolled in front, between it and the wall, they put a blob of clay with Pilate's seal on it. And that had carried the weight of Pilate himself. They could not be opened until he said so. Of course, Jesus didn't wait for that. A seal is precious, and a seal was personal. It showed ownership, it showed identification, and it also showed security. According to Unger's Bible Dictionary, seals were used to make permanent, to mark ownership, to keep secret, and to approve. And in Revelation 7, we read of God's seal placed upon the foreheads of his own to symbolize safety and deliverance from judgment. In Ephesians, we read, having believed, you were sealed with the Holy Spirit until the day of redemption. In 2 Corinthians, Paul writes, now it is God who makes both you and us stand firm in Christ. And listen to this. He anointed us, set his seal of ownership upon us, and put his Spirit in our hearts as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. In much of our world today, even today, no document is considered authentic without a seal. And we can authentically say that we are God's possession because we carry his seal. God identifies us as his own precious personal possession. Ownership and security are guaranteed to all upon whom God places his seal, upon whom he stamps his name. As the power of Nebuchadnezzar stood behind the seal that locked the den for Daniel, we are sealed by God as a sign that divine omnipotence will defend us. We feel what we value. God knows we may be of no value in ourselves, but he finds us of infinite worth and can use us for his important purpose. A seal does not praise the object. It praises the owner, and we belong to God, and we are sealed. Doesn't that make you happy? I could say hallelujah. I'd like to show you teachers a project that you will be able to carry on with your children if you would like, which has to do with seals. I learned about this from a education department chairman at the Oriental Institute in Chicago. Her name is Joan Berghusen. And you can suggest to the children that they could make their own seals. But you have to have two ingredients. First of all, you have to have a clay which is self-hardening. The reason that this clay is better than the kind that you bake is that it doesn't involve a kiln or an oven. Be sure that you get the self-hardening clay. And when you take that, then you can give a piece to the children, and they can shape it as they wish. The child can make his own design on it, and he can put his name on it. He can put flowers, he can use a pencil or a toothpick or a coin or just anything that he wants to that you have handy, and he can pick out his name. Here is one which was done by a boy named John. And you see, you have to remember to put it in mirror image, because when it comes out on here, it's going to be straight only if you do it in mirror image when you write the name. Let me show you just a few that people have made. A little girl named Deborah just poked holes in hers, and so I wrote her name, Deb, which comes out like this on the clay. We have this one, which was done by a little girl. In fact, Mrs. Barkhusen's daughter did this. This is the Egyptian symbol for water. And she put little feet next to it. And she rolled it over the clay. And so she got a cute imprint. Now, this clay that we use for the clay to make the imprint, here's one that I made that looks something like my friend's, which was done with red pink marble. It was thick like this. And I put a design on just with a few stars, as you can see. And then my name was done in mirror image, but it comes out so that it says my name and you can easily read it. The clay that you buy to use to put the imprint on has to be clay which will not harden, non-hardening clay. Here is another one made by Ben, but you see each one of these people did something different. Each one made a different design. Here is one that just put dots and a star, which makes it very simple. And it's fun for the children because these will harden like a rock. And when they've hardened like a rock, and you put them on the soft clay, they make a beautiful design. And that's what the children like. Then you need to take something you put a hole in the middle. This one I like to use with a nail, and then you can roll it more easily. Or they can use it to hang if they want to as a pendant. This one also works on a nail, as you will see. And some of them worked on an old chopstick I used, so that you can also have it this way, and then you can more easily press it on the clay. Well, I hope this has given you an idea of something you could do with your children if you would like to, and I think, too, that it will help us to know what it means to be sealed, that the Lord tells us that we are His. Authentically, we're identified as His people, and I think that makes all of us as Christians rejoice. This is our lesson on the seals. Thank you. I'll see you next week.